Once upon a time, there was a woman named Iris, who was feeling very, very sad. She had lost her little boy, Mateo, during a family trip, and her heart was broken into a million pieces. She missed him so much that one day she decided to visit the very spot where he had passed away, hoping it might help her feel closer to him. But the sadness was so big and heavy that she started wondering if she would ever feel happy again. As she stood by the edge of a cliff looking down, a man named Richard appeared, almost out of nowhere. He had a friendly smile and offered to walk her back to her car, saying he could help her. Iris wasn't sure at first, but he seemed kind enough. They started walking back, chatting along the way. But when they reached the cars, something very strange happened. Richard turned around and zap! He shocked Iris with a strange device that left her dizzy and unable to move. He tied her hands and feet, and then he loaded her into the back of his car. When Iris woke up, they were in a moving car, heading somewhere far from town. Richard, now with a wicked grin, told her they were going to a remote cabin where he planned to spend the whole weekend together. But Iris was no ordinary person. She had a small pocket knife tucked away, and with a lot of effort, she managed to cut the ties on her wrists. She quickly jumped forward, grabbing at the wheel and causing Richard to swerve. The car crashed into a tree, but Iris wasn't giving up. She kicked her way out, cutting her ankles free, and made a run for it into the thick woods. But Richard, who seemed to have thought of everything, just laughed. During their scuffle, he'd managed to stick her with a syringe filled with a paralytic that would slowly take away her ability to move. "You can run," he called after her, "but only for about 20 minutes. And so, Iris ran through the woods, her legs getting slower and heavier. She finally made it to a river and, knowing she had no time to lose, flopped down on her back and let the water carry her downstream. The river was cold and rough, but it was her only way out. Eventually, she washed up on the shore, exhausted and barely able to move. Now, on the edge of this river lived an old man named Bill. He was out mowing his lawn when he saw Iris, all battered and lying in the mud. He rushed to help her, and though she could barely move, she blinked her eyes to communicate. Once for yes, twice for no. Bill was a sharp old fellow, and he figured out something was wrong. He helped Iris into his house and was just about to call for help when, knock, knock, there was Richard at the door, pretending to be a concerned husband looking for his lost wife. Bill didn't trust Richard one bit. He noticed something was off, so he didn't mention Iris. He pretended to call 911 for information, hoping to buy time. But Richard caught on, and before Bill could do anything more, Richard attacked him and sadly took his life. Then he set the house on fire, hoping that would be the end of both Bill and Iris. But Iris, even in her weakened state, was a fighter. She managed to pull on a cord by the window, making enough noise to alert Richard. With a sinister grin, he scooped her up and carried her out of the burning house, placing her in Bill's old truck. They drove on, but the injection was wearing off, and Iris was regaining her strength. When they stopped at a gas station, she tried to escape, but Richard was too quick. He drove her to his crashed car, needing to retrieve some of his things. Just then, a police officer drove by and, sensing something strange, decided to investigate. Richard pretended that Iris was his wife, saying she'd crashed the car while drunk. But the officer didn't buy it, and as he moved closer to help Iris, Richard attacked him. Sadly, the brave officer lost his life, and Richard continued on with Iris. Richard took her to a small boat by a jetty, planning to row out to a deep part of the lake. But as they drifted out, Iris's strength returned just in time. She spotted a knife lying in the boat, and with one swift move she grabbed it and struck him. Richard was stunned, clutching his neck as he fell backward, splashing into the cold lake. But he wasn't gone just yet. As he struggled to climb back into the boat, Iris found his gun and fired at him, ending the chase. The shots pierced the boat though, and soon it was sinking, taking all of Richard's plans with it. With the last of her strength, Iris swam back to shore. She climbed out of the water, wet, cold, and exhausted, only to see that Richard had somehow pulled himself onto the bank further down, breathing his last breath. Iris stood over him, and as she watched him fade away, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A glimmer of hope. Her ordeal, as terrifying as it was had reminded her that she wanted to live, to survive, and to go on in memory of her son, Matteo. And with that, Iris walked back into the sunlight, knowing she had faced her darkest fears and emerged stronger than ever.